It's cold outside, and if you go to turn your heat all the way to hot and you turn up the fan and it still just doesn't blow anything but cold air or lukewarm air, there's a couple of reasons that it could be. Let's talk about that. The most common reason that I find, I've been a mechanic for decades, is that the coolant's low. If you have a leak in your cooling system, it can cause air to build up and accumulate in your heater core. You see these two hoses going into the cabin? That's where your heat comes from. The antifreeze gets pumped by your water pump. In this case it's in the middle, clear down there. But the water pump pumps the fluid throughout the engine and cools it off, but it also uses that hot coolant to go into the cabin into a tiny little radiator about, graphically about this big, and then that tiny little radiator has a fan called a blower motor that blows the heat through that little mini radiator. It radiates the heat into your cabin. So if you don't get heat, or if the temperature quality isn't great, there's a good chance that there's air in there because you have air in your cooling system. Just make sure it's full up to this rim, this inner rim that you see here. And if you have a bottle, make sure that you fill it up to the line. You can see that this one has a line right here for the minimum and maximum. Look for that. If it's up to the max cold, then you're good, then that's not your problem. If that's not your problem, you might have stop leak or some other kind of garbage stuck in that little mini radiator, that heater core. So this video is going to be about how to clean and flush all that junk out. The first step is to drive the vehicle, get it up to operating temperature so that the needle is somewhere in the middle between hot and cold, or that little blue temperature light goes out, or something to indicate that you've driven long enough. The next thing you do is grab those heater hoses. Which one's hot? Is it this one or this one? If you find that in this case this one was hot, then that's the one that has antifreeze being pumped in, and then the one that's cold is the output or the outlet side. What I did is I back flush it. I want to go backwards. If the hot antifreeze is not getting in this side, I want to send cleaner and hot water in through this side. To do that, I've got a couple of hoses here. I've got one that's about 4 feet long, and that's connected to a transmission fill funnel that fits into a 5/8 inch hose and is zip tied to the hood. If you have lift struts or something other than the stick, then you want to make sure that you put a stick or something to hold the weight of the antifreeze. You don't want hot water being poured into this and then your worn out lift struts like collapsing and having this pour hot water over you. So watch out for that. So I've got this funnel and every hose hooked up to the output side, so it's going to go in there. If you're a little confused or you're not sure, sometimes you can even just pull the hoses off and look and see which one looks like crap. In this case, it's the one that was hot. So you can see all the corrosion on that. So make sure that the input side becomes the output side. We're back flushing this thing is what we're doing. And then hook up a couple of hoses. If you buy 10 feet of hose, this hose isn't terribly expensive. You can use real heater hose. I have some on hand, so that's what I'm using. So where is this going? This goes down to a catch basin. You can see right here. I want to see what's coming out of that. So the first thing that you do is you hook up your hoses, have your catch basin, catch whatever antifreeze is in there. And the way you do that is you just take the end of this hose, this clean hose, and then with all of this set up, blow in it. Take a deep breath, and as soon as you put your mouth on that hose, you blow. As soon as you're out of breath, get your mouth off the hose. You don't want to breathe the vapors from the antifreeze. It's toxic. It's bad for you. Beer's toxic. That's how you get intoxicated. So don't wet your pants about being all upset about it either. As far as the catch basin, once you have all that coolant out of it, go ahead and dispose of it, handle it, do what you're going to do so that you don't contaminate the next batch. So get a clean container, put it back up in there. Nothing's in it but air at this point. What you want to do is run some hot water through it. Where do you get hot water? Well, you can get it from your stove. I'm talking boiling hot water. Water boils at 212 degrees. Your car's engine temperature, the running temperature, is about 190 degrees, between 185 and 195. So if you run hot water backwards through this thing, it's going to knock a lot of that stuff loose. So while I was getting all of that set up, I've had this big pot of water on the stove getting hot. So I'm going to take that pot, I'm going to go directly to the funnel and pour it into the vehicle. As soon as you take this big old pot of water off the stove, it's going to stop bubbling, but believe you me, this is hot. If you spill a little, big deal, it's hot water. So you fill up your funnel, and don't expect it to go down right away. Be a little cautious, be ready to get back off of it, but you'll find that it'll sit and sit and sit, and then all of a sudden you'll notice that it just goes right through. Another thing to be careful of is that when you heat plastic to boiling water kind of temperatures, you're going to find it gets soft. So be careful, make sure that you don't get burned. You know, you're dealing with boiling water after all, come on. Be careful, use precaution. As it pours through your heater core, you'll see that it'll trickle and flow and do its thing. The next thing I do is run some kind of cleaner in there with some hot water. I got a whole bunch of this stuff on sale. It's just a small bottle. You can see compared to my thing, it's not like a gallon. What is it? It is 22 ounces. So I'll take this stuff, dump it in there, and then I'll let it sit while I'm boiling some water. Flush it through with a little bit of hot water just to make it sure that I have enough to push through the hose and fill up that tiny little radiator. It doesn't hold a whole lot, but I'll let that sit. I've got to boil a big old pot of water on the stove for the next step, so I just let that sit and soak and let that cleaner do its magic. Now remember, when you're filling your pot full of water, you don't want it all the way up to the brim. The more full it is, the more you're going to spill. That first little bit's hard to get in, hard to get it to really behave. But once you get down a little bit, it goes pretty quick and it's easier to pour. So if you're worried about spilling, or you're a little nervous, or you haven't done it before, don't fill it more than you have to. It's going to increase your risk of injury and spilling. But the lower it gets, as you can see, it's a lot easier. And it's going a lot faster. This thing sat for maybe 4 or 5 minutes before it went down the first time I poured. This thing was really pretty blocked. Poor wife, she's been asking me to do this for quite a while. So I'm really happy to finally get this done before Christmas. Because it's cold. It's freezing. You've heard the saying, everybody's water works but the plumber's. He's out fixing everybody else's. Yeah, I'm like that to some degree, but I like to take care of her. That's what we're doing. Now the heater core for this, if I'd have just replaced the heater core, it would have been great and it would have worked awesome. Trouble is, the heater core for this, it's about a 4-hour job and it's $100, $130 to replace it. The problem isn't the heater core, it's not leaking, it's all of the stop leak that some yahoo put in this trying to fix a water pump. Don't use stop leak. It just plugs your heater core. It's so frustrating as a mechanic. You know, for me it's easy to replace the water pumps. For somebody else it'd be a lot more expensive, lose their car for the whole day. For me it's like 2-3 hours because I know how to do it. Speaking of which, I'll leave a link at the end of the video as well as in the description on how to replace the water pump on this specific vehicle. It's so much better to just find the leak and fix the leak. You know, don't put something that, you know, indiscriminately plugs everything up. You get this. Now that we've got everything done, just like we blew the antifreeze out, we're going to blow the water out. You just go like this. That's pretty good. So water's not going to hurt anything unless it's freezing cold, in which case you want to get all that water out and replace what was in there with coolant, or just hook up your hoses and, you know, be good to go with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the water, the soapy water, down the toilet basically. If there's no antifreeze in it, you can always dump soapy water down your toilet. It's no big deal. And because we're using a lot of volume of soapy water to clean this out, that's why we separate our flushes and doing what we're doing with the antifreeze. Antifreeze does not go down the toilet so much, right? Right. Go hug a tree, would you? I will too. We'll do it together. Yay. I love this tree. So at this point, we've got nothing but air in the heater core. It's nice and clear. So I'm going to take some universal antifreeze and pour that down the funnel until I hear just a little trickle into the clean pan. As soon as I hear a clean trickle, it should be like less than a half gallon. There we go. So now we've got a heater core that's full of coolant, so we don't have a bunch of trapped air. Just remember what I said, if you have a bunch of trapped air, that air heats up, it expands, it creates pressure. Not to mention, that's one of the highest points in your whole cooling system. So if there's going to be air, it's going to get trapped there. So the more you know. Cut off my zip tie. Okay, so once it's below the level of this, again, you can push a little bit through if you like, or just wait for it. As I swing this, I can kind of feel about where the coolant is. It's about here. So I'm just going to nurse that through. I can see coolant coming out the other side of it. Now I've got a drain pan underneath of there to catch the excess. So I'm going to twist this. Never squish the end of the hose. You can squeeze this part and twist with pliers or something if you have to. But bear in mind, this sucker is aluminum or copper, which are both soft metals that you don't want to ruin. We're trying to save the heater core, not destroy it, right? So we'll take our other heater hose off. And see, we're not spilling very much. We're not creating some big environmental disaster here. We're catching our coolant, we're disposing of it properly. Dun dun dun! Most heater cores don't care which way the coolant goes. They really don't. So you can switch it through and keep on flushing as you run your heater, or put it back the way it was. All good things. So this is the one that goes into the heater core. This is the one that comes out of the heater core. I'm going to do one more trick here because there's no heater valve, check valve kind of thing on this system. I'm going to reverse these so it constantly back flushes now. I'm going to twist them over. It's not going to hurt anything on this vehicle. If you find that you've got a big old valve with hoses going in and out of it, a vacuum line or a little electronic dash pot kind of thing on it, don't do this. But for this vehicle, I'm just going to keep on keeping on back flushing this, get further made clean. So as I put my hose clamps back on, make sure that I tug on them. So as you know, like spring-loaded hose clamps, they're kind of screwy because, you know, they're great, they keep good tension on, but you got to kind of preload them. If you can match where it was on the hose, that helps too. But basically I'm just binding them down on the hose by twisting them the way that they don't want to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is revisit this here, top off the coolant. I'll run it long enough for the thermostat to open up and then let all the air come up to here, and then I'll fill it again cold, and then the heat will be great. So if you want to see what we got out of this, let's go check it out. So this pan was totally clean when I started the process. When I drained the coolant out, that was one batch, and I'm sure there was more garbage in that. But once I started doing cleaner and boiling hot water and then cleaner again, soapy water, this is what I got. You can see there's still a little soapy water in there, but that is stop leak. When you look up close at this stuff, there's a little bit of rust particles, but for the most part, it's copper, what do you call it, bars leak? I mean, I can even tell you what brand it is. Somebody put a bunch of bars leak in it, it just wound up blocking the heater core, and it didn't fix the leak. So nothing against bars leak, you know, like if you had a leak in a radiator, this works. If you have a leak in a heater core, it might work. But if you have a leaky water pump that's a rubber seal, there's no way in heck this is going to seal that. So I've got this filled up. You can see that it's overflowing a little bit. I've got a catch basin underneath. You just basically need to make sure you're down to that lower level. If it's full up to there, you're good. Jeez McGee's. There we go. Yay. So I'm going to leave a link in the description for the cleaner, the cap, hose you can buy in bulk, all that kind of stuff. It will be linked in the description. But at this point, we run the vehicle, as I say, till the thermostat opens. Once the thermostat opens, it'll belch up a bunch of air. We'll let the vehicle cool down. Everything will recompress from expanding and being hot. And then we'll top it off cold. We'll make sure it's full to the coal line on the overflow bottle. We'll make sure it's full up to the rim at the radiator cap. Once we've done that after it's run, the thermostat's belched up a bunch of air, we're just going to be in great shape. So I've revved it up. I've got it where it's at operating temperature. I've got the heater on. It used to be that you're like wondering, you know, is this hot or cold? I can't really tell. It's hot now. Like if you leave your hand there, it will be uncomfortable. So I didn't replace the heater core. All I did is flush all the crud out of it so it gets good flow. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out some of these other videos. Here's a video on how to do the water pump on this vehicle. Here's another video on how to flush or super clean a heater core. There's lots of ways to do this, lots of ways to get the same job done. You could do it wrong and mess up a bunch of stuff that I've said here and still have a good result. So don't be shy. Go for it.